welcome to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop, and it is a beautiful Friday night on St. Paddy's Day, and it's another great weekend for us here at Lighting the Void on the network. We are live broadcasting on KTLK, the Fringe FM. You can hear us across the web on the Fringe FM, Spreaker, TalkStream Live, iTunes Radio, TuneIn, millions of other directories out there, and we're happy to have you. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Lighting the Void, on Twitter at Lighting the Void. And tonight is cool. We have Sebastien Martin with us, and I'm really happy to have him aboard. I've been listening to his shows with Jimmy, with Dave, and I'm glad to have him here, and it's going to be a cool evening. Man, I got to tell you, I would talk about the weather again. You guys know how I am with the spring. I think it's here to stay. But the weird thing, I've been getting these weird vibes all weekend since we've been having these discussions. And the street light, I live way, way back off the street, right? So the street light just blew up. I mean, it exploded up here at my house. Everything went pitch dark. I couldn't see anything. And I just realized that I'm still scared of the dark. Yeah, I am still afraid of the dark. 35 years old. And still quite scared when I can't see in front of my face. But I'm in the studio now. It's well lit, and we're all good. By the way, Leo the cat is doing great. Thanks for asking. And I did receive a few emails that I really don't know if I should talk about or not, but I do want to say the email, and you know who you are, where you sent me an email about to keep going and keep doing the show, that the show helps you while you're working and things like that. Those emails really mean a lot to me. They mean the world to me. And I know you know who I'm talking to, so thank you. I appreciate that. Don't forget to sign up for the newsletter. Me and Dave, for a fact, we are going to be at the Ozark Conference in Eureka Springs. I'm going to drive my little Honda up there to the mountains, and we're going to have a good time. We're going to talk to people like Linda Moulton Howe, Grant Cameron, and Stanton Friedman, and there's gonna be a lot of cool vendors up there. It's gonna be fun, so we're gonna have a blast. So I don't really want to get too much into the rambling, even though there is some crazy news going on. I just got to say, Cheryl has really helped me out with that. And you guys that are on TuneIn, thank you. I see you listening. Come join us over on the Spreaker chat, or you can chat on hashtag LTV Radio if you like the Twitter thing. There you go. And yeah, some people are hitting up here. Hey, Deb, Kat, thanks for joining us. I know Dave will be here soon. Everybody will start falling in. But we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to have Mr. Sebastien Martin on. So don't go anywhere, guys. It's going to be a really cool night. The stream is really filling up, man. If I could get some of you guys to come over here on Spreaker, I would love it. All you got to do is just say hi. You don't have to talk. And then later on, we're going to open up the phones, the second part of the show, and the number is 831-777-8643. That'll be 831-777-VOID. All right, let's get this thing going. Tonight, we have special guest Sebastien Martin, and it's going to be pretty awesome. All right, I've been looking forward to talking with him. And Sebastien Martin is a Canadian serial entrepreneur born in France who has built international health food brands for over a decade with offices in the USA, Canada, the UK, and New Zealand. In November of 2011, he had a close encounter of a fifth kind with a stellar being living in a fifth dimensional reality in his living room and had communications with him. That is some pretty intense stuff right there, just that statement alone. And the rest of his star family ever since, receiving frequent and powerful downloads, all aimed to raise our consciousness and change our vibration. This one-of-a-kind disturbing experience has forced Sebastian to resort to the services of a hypnotherapist to help him with the anxiety arising from this life-changing encounter, as well as the prophetic visions he had since a child. Detailed memories were extracted from these sessions, providing critical information about the Galactic Alliance agenda, split souls, human consciousness, and much more. More recent visits involving the 11th dimensional beings reinforced his beliefs to pursue this mission and share it with the mass population. Now, I've got links up on here on the article. If you go to lightingthevoid.com, just go to the show reel. There's links there. His website is nsuho.com. That's nsuho.com. Or you can go to consciousnessplus, I believe, .com. And I'm ready to dig into this conversation. How you doing this evening, Sebastian?
I'm doing great, Joe, and thank you very much for having me.
Man, it's a pleasure. You know what I find interesting about this? Everybody that I talk to on this show I'll ask them this question. I'll say, how long or when did this start for you? And they'll say, oh, this has started for me since I was a child. That's not the case with you, though, is it? Not really.
No, really, no. I mean, sure enough, I had visions since I was a child, and I was very empathic and could feel presences of ghosts and such things when I was living in my parents' house. But the alien idea was very foreign to me, in a sense that I knew about UFOs, and I probably obviously watched movies, but that was to me just science fiction and pure entertainment. Nothing real, nothing really that connected with me until 5 years ago. That's truly when it all started for me. And especially when I had my first, regression under hypnosis, where even when I was regressed when I was 16 years old, which is the time where I had most of my visions, coming up in full blown with automatic writing, out of body experiences, being seen at two different places at once. Such things really happened in a very vivid, strong way when I was 16 years old, when my father sent me to a private school in France. And that's when the hypnotherapist wanted me to go back to, in order to relieve that time where I had most visions, in order to somehow treat them, almost like the way you would be treating someone with, addictions on cigarettes or alcohol or something. And then she was just trying to help me out to resolve the issues I had, because I was suffering from those visions on a daily basis when I was 35 years old, and it was really impacting my work, and it was causing stress and anxiety. And not so much the day-to-day work to me was very fun. I had no problems dealing with this. So, and again, to explain a bit my background for those who don't really know me, is that I, built a business from scratch with my wife, and we grew it as an international business. And we had 35 employees in all parts of the world, and I was in charge of all of these offices using the Canadian model for all the countries that we set up offices into. And that really took up a lot of my time. So I seriously didn't have any time for anything else. It was not something that I was looking forward to, and the visions I had were more of a pain than any comfort to me in my life. So knowing that when I met my wife in the first place, 10 years earlier, I basically just was telling her about my visions, and she was frightened by them. So I decided to shut them up, for her for 10 years. And I don't know if you can imagine a metallic gate shutting all around you. And that's pretty much the way I envisioned it at the time, to shut my visions off. And that worked really well. It basically didn't bother me for 10 years. And as soon as my wife got pregnant with our first child, all the visions came back in full force. It started up as night visions. I was, woken up in the middle of the night with very vivid visions that I knew were not dreams, and I was writing them down. And in the morning, when I was looking them up, such things happened. And I already discussed it at length in other places. But, when I was bombarded by those visions after a few years, I decided to resort to the help, of an hypnotherapist, so I could, get on with my life. And the hypnotherapist bringing me back to the age of 16 made me realize that there was more to it than just visions. And my encounter with aliens really started up in an unexpected way, because I was really conscious of what I was saying. which is weird for me because I always believe that hypnosis was something where you lose your mind and you not remember anything, and the hypnotherapist could tell you to do whatever they wanted, and and that's kind of the way my parents kind of taught me. My dad mostly was telling me about it. So when I remembered that I could see myself as the first person, I could see my feet and my arms, my fingers, and I couldn't see my face. When I looked up, and the first thing I described was, I can see the bottom of a plate. That's how the UFO showed up itself, and that's how I described it. I had the audio recordings of all the hypnotherapy sessions I had, and when I listened back to the sessions, I just realized that's the word I've used. A plate or the bottom of a cup. It didn't look like a UFO to me at first because I didn't have any expectations of any aliens or UFOs happening to me when I was 16 years old or any time in my life. So that's pretty much how it started up for me. And my encounters with the aliens, despite that, a week earlier before the session, I had this strange experience in my living room. I was not really thinking of the actual UFOs. Sure enough, I had a weird encounter. I think, as you probably remember, the experience I had at night. I had a dream when I was 35, and that dream was about this teenage boy looking at me with a bright smile, and he was very happy to see me. Right. Almost like overwhelming because he was so happy to see me. It was like uncontrollable. It felt to me that his emotions, and I never said that before, but it felt like his emotions were like it was too much. It was not something that a normal person would do, and I couldn't really understand why at that point. But when this teenage boy was looking at me, and when I woke up in the morning, I thought, well, it was just like a normal dream. Even if this boy didn't really look like a normal boy, he had higher cheekbones, he had wider eyes, more spaced away from each other from the nose, he just, he was just perfect looking guy, almost like a surfer dude, but, in a very different way. Right. And when I woke up, I thought I would just like brush it off and then just get on with my day. Well, but when I went to the office,
let me ask you this real quick. What you're describing is what I've heard to be as like a Nordic or whatever. Did you know anything about this race or these people or anything when you had first met these people? Like, had you read anything about it, seen anything about it? So you had no clue. I find that
no
super
clue
interesting.
Whatsoever. No, I didn't know anything about Nordics. I didn't know anything about any of the alien races or the Galactic Federation, or in fact, I didn't know anything about the Galactic Federation until I went to Joshua Tree back in June. So all this time, since November of 2011 to June of 2016, I didn't even bother looking into the subject because I was still busy in other parts of my life, and the Nordic being that you are saying was not really a Nordic. It was like what it ended up to be like more of a Pleiadian. And I think that the Nordics would be kind of a different race, and they would have different agendas. They'd certainly probably look alike, but in different ways. And I think there might be some correlations in some kind of way. But the being that showed up to me, that appeared to me, didn't really go away during the day. Like when I was going to work, and that being was still right in front of me as I was doing my day-to-day job, which was very traumatic because I could not check him off. And it felt like he was observing me, and I could see everything around me, but I could also see him at the same time. And that was pretty troubling. So when I went back at home at night, I just decided to sit down on my sofa after pouring myself a cup of tea, not really expecting much from anything. I was just sitting down, just almost like to get some answers. And as I was sitting down, within 1 second of closing my eyes, I could see this wind, like tornado, all around me. And when I opened my eyes, when the wind stopped, I could see him standing up right in front of me. And he wasn't very far away from me, but he was glowing. He had like a glow all around him. and he was still wearing this blue suit very tight suit on. And this is what really struck me is when I first saw him, he was still looking at me with this brightest smile, the same way he had in my dream,
right?
And the way he was during the day. But he was definitely there. Like I could see him. I could not even see the shelves behind him. He was like solid looking right in front of me. And yet the room was pitch black, but yet he had this glow emanating from his body that was very tight to his body, not very wide, but enough for me to see him in full color and very bright. And when I tried to move, because obviously it startled me quite a fair bit, I was trying to move and my hands was glued to the sofa. And when I tried to speak, I couldn't speak. So I was looking at him, not frightened because his aura was so beneficial. I didn't feel threatened or scared. He almost like put me at peace just by looking at him, because he really came in a non-frightening way. And so when I tried to speak to him, I was already thinking, who are you? What are you doing in my house? And he came back and responded to me telepathically saying, my name is Zor and I'm from the Galactic Alliance. And it was the way the conversation started, because the first thing that came to my mind during that week, especially where I had very vivid visions of traumatic events. I had, I've seen tsunamis and earthquakes, and I live on Vancouver Island, which is part of the Ring of Fire. And with my young family, I was thinking, well, how can I protect them? Because that was really what was the stress, or the cause of my stress, is all of these visions I was seeing in such detail that I even ended up going to the local town hall to actually talk to the mayor and sharing with him the visions I had. And the mayor knew me very well. And I said, look, you know me, and I would not really come forward if I didn't think that those visions were real to me. And he said, I understand that, Sebastian, but, we have no real plan of actions for such things, especially like I was seeing things about the local area. And what's interesting about that, though, because this was back in 2011, and when I was already talking to this locally, the people in town were already addressing certain place. Like there were some locations in the town I live in that needed work. So in fact, some of the budget was allocated to maintain the marsh area that was endangered. So for any kind of flooding, and they're still doing some work right now that costs millions of dollars to make sure that the flood would not reach the town and downtown core of the town I live in. And because this is a very potential threat that could occur locally. If we had a tsunami and an earthquake, the water would just like gush in right through the valley and into our town. And I've seen all of these events from various angles while being on site. I saw it even at a bird's eye view. I saw the whole Vancouver Island, and then I saw the rest of the west coast of Canada, the US, and further. So you can imagine, as all of these visions were building up, it was basically part of my life. And so when I saw Zor, which is spelled Z or Z-O-A-R, I asked him, I said, do you think those visions will happen? And he said to me, he didn't quite answer to me very clearly, as she said that, people will die, but, death doesn't really exist. It's not such a big deal. And he was still looking at me with the same bright smile, almost like overcompensating for the traumatic, words he was using. And so I was looking at him and thinking, well, that's still stressing me out even more, because you are taking it so casually.
Yeah. It doesn't bother him at all. Yeah, buddy, you're going to die, but that's okay, man. Don't worry about it.
It's but the way he said it is, he talked about timelines as well. And the word timeline to me didn't mean anything to me whatsoever. I know way more about timelines today than I ever did in 2011 for sure. Mm-hmm. And I've experienced many different types of timelines that I know could be fictitious or different timelines. But I know that remaining on this path and sharing the information I have and trying to awaken the starseeds and the consciousness of the people today will preserve us from these traumatic events, or at least will delay them. So we will definitely be more prepared for such events. And this really didn't make any sense to me at the time, because I was just more afraid for my own family, to be honest. It was very selfish and egoistic about that, but I was, really concerned about our livelihood and if we should just stay where we were and these sort of things. I mean, we already moved from one place in Duncan, where we live. We had a house, and I was walking in my kitchen. My wife was breastfeeding our child, and I could see the floorboards basically falling under my feet in broad daylight. And I could feel the earthquake like around on my house. And as I walked back into the living room and spoke to my wife, I said to her what I lived through. And I said, we need to sell the house, because this house will just crumble if we stayed in here. And so that's what we did. We actually moved to the place we're in now, and we are now an organically certified herb farm with vegetables, and we're kind of self-sustainable that way. We have greenhouses, and we have much better.
That's what that was. That aerial shot you showed me from Google Earth. Is that all your gardens and stuff you have out there?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Okay, that's pretty rad. So you're doing your own thing. A lot of people talk about that, but you're actually growing your own stuff, and I imagine you feel a lot better than the rest of us. Junkies that we eat all this stuff that's just given to us every 5 minutes.
Well, at the end of the day, even if I still feel more prepared than most, and I still have a earthquake kit in my truck as well, because I believe that's probably the safest place to keep some goods for not just like a few days, like the government will say, keep enough food for 72 hours and you'll be fine, and the help will come. I've seen such events where the help will not come for at least 2 months. And so in order to be prepared, many people may die if they're not prepared themselves, so don't get the help that they need by, getting some white cans and such things, for themselves, storing them. And even, the main issue is water, right? So when you are in an earthquake situation, many people living in California and elsewhere in earthquake zones will know that the first cause of death in an earthquake environment is dehydration. So getting some straws, I actually purchased some straws from Amazon to basically clear enough water I could drink from any kind of pond or source of water. So I could, feel, hydrated anywhere I go, and I've got some in my car, in my house, pretty much everywhere, because that way, you don't have to actually carry any stuff. You can just be mobile, and to me, that's a very smart way to first deal with dehydration, is to have something on site where you can just get some water. It's still good enough to have some water in your car, regardless. Exactly. Yeah. And change of clothes and such things too, because many earthquakes actually really would happen at night if you're asleep, and you definitely need to have like a change of clothes in your vehicle and keep renewing the stuff that you have in terms of food and so on. So to me, even if I was prepared, I always knew that these such earthquakes or something could happen while I'm in town. So what would happen then? I still would have my earthquake kits, but I don't think my car would protect me from a tsunami coming in and rolling into the town. So, But at the same time, even if those concerns were there, I always felt protected. I always felt that wherever I would be and whenever this could happen, I will still be protected or somehow extract myself from such situation. And, maybe it's just a way for me to comfort myself to be at peace with what will happen. But
no, they do it in the South here all the time when anything happens. But the difference is what you're doing is actually pretty smart, okay? Down here, they just run and buy a whole bunch of bullets and guns. I have no idea why. You think they'd be going for water and food, but, you think that would be first, but it's not.
No. Well, they probably go to the easiest neighbor.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. Now, you've these stories, man, are like, I've been listening to them on Dave's show, as I said, on Jimmy Church's show, listening to you talk about this, and a lot of this stuff resonates with things, again, that I find fascinating that you found out about this stuff later. All of this stuff later that just corresponds with the teachings that go back even thousands and thousands of years to Atlantis. And, I know you got some new stuff you want to talk about, so I don't I know I don't want to go through the whole detail of it, but I do want to say that, it's interesting as I'm listening to your stories, especially the one about Joshua Tree, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
That one, the Metatron's cube, right?
Right.
Tell me a little bit more about that story. I'm really interested in that.
Well, first of all, while I was, at Joshua Tree, I had an interest, in meditating with a group of people that were listening to Dr. Dream, who was, playing his Tibetan bowls. He had, I don't know how many, 300 Tibetan bowls playing at the same time. And he was, with his crew, they were spraying some essential oils in the crowd. And it was a very beautiful ceremony at the same time, where he was describing how to go through each chakra. And to be honest with you, and despite what people might think, is I'm not really meditating very often. Mm-hmm. And I every time I meditate, my whole body vibrate, and I just come out of my body so easily that I no longer really stay on this earth. I always travel through the cosmos. And for whatever reason, when Dr. Dream started to start his meditation process, even before going from on the first chakra, I was already in full meditation myself, and I was so relaxed. And as soon as he started talking, I remember myself like simply going out of my body and being thrown out in space. And when I was in space, I traveled so fast that I basically went back to the light source, very bright light, and it felt so humbling at the same time, but also very rejuvenating. So I was immersed into this white light, and I was experiencing love and kindness and compassion. And at the same time, while being there and not really seeing much, because while it was a very bright light, it was not obviously harming me in any way, but I was certainly feeling that there was something else. And as I was meditating even more, and I could feel that there was something else going on at the same time, but I didn't know quite what it was. And all of a sudden, I was thrown into a room that contained a mandala that was
right on.
Undescribable. I mean, it was almost like surrounded by gems, like green gems all around it, and it had there was a symbol attached to it, but I didn't know anything about it. And so all it felt was it was something precious, but not precious like gold or stones like that. It was really more about spiritual, but I just didn't put my finger onto it. I didn't really know what it was, but somehow it meant something to me. And I still don't really know to this day what that means. It was just a beautiful, piece of artifact that was right there in the middle of the room that I was supposed to be seeing. And the meditation finished very quickly, after 2 hours. So for me, I didn't really feel any time. I was already, time didn't really matter. At that point, I didn't even hear Dr. Dream. I didn't really hear anything that you were saying. I was no longer there. And when I came back into my body, it took me a while to again, get up and everything else, because it was so profound that, I really didn't put any connections with archangels or angels or anything else like that. But when I went back the next day into the field, and there was lots of shops on site, and I could buy some pendants, and out of 60 pendants, there was one pendant that really attracted me, and I grabbed it. And the pendant was the Metatron's cube, and I didn't know what it was. And when I decided to come back home in Canada, I was supposed to be going to France for a business trip, and I went to Strasbourg. And before going over there, I had some friends which I met earlier, who were into the consciousness movement and certain things like that. And I've asked them if we could meet in Strasbourg, and they brought me to a place where I could experience something profound too. That was a Qatar place, very ancient location that was used by pagan people, but the Qatars basically are an ancient cultures from like 800 after Christ, and
yeah. Right
and
on.
they built like a monastery on top of that, and the location was to me very energetically filled, and I could feel the energy all around. I could see the entities walking around. I could feel the flow of energy flowing around the property, not so much the buildings, but the actual property. And I felt like going onto this rock next to the source that was there. And Saint Odile was the saint that apparently, according to the legend, pierced or like punched a rock, and a source flew out of it. And that's to help a blind person who needed some water, was thirsty on that path. And it was basically a part of pilgrimage, I think.
Yeah.
And when I sat on that rock, I could feel, first of all, before I went onto that rock, I could see this young woman, short woman, sitting on that rock meditating. It wasn't like praying. She was like meditating. And I felt compelled to go onto that rock and sit down and do the same thing. And I could feel this energy. And the guys I was with, looked at me on that rock and felt like walking up, because it was not easy to actually get up to that rock, but I felt that I had to go there. And they followed me and really felt the energy flowing through that location, which was not part of the main path leading to the monastery and or the chapels. And so when I went back to Canada after that experience, pretty much about 15 days later, that's when I was again in my living room, and I was checking, Facebook content and so on. Then all of a sudden I could feel this change of energy in the room. And that was related to the Archangels that showed up 45 minutes later at about 11:11. So not only the 11:11 is something that follows me around every single day, I just also realized that when I first had my encounter with Zoe was in November of 2011, which is 11:11 again. So all these synchronicities in my life obviously are there for a reason somehow. And when the Archangels showed up, they basically materialized themselves right in front of me after I could feel this change of energy, like electric feeling in the room. And then those figures showed up, and they basically looked like men that were not more than 6'2", and they were wearing these white robes with like silvery hair, long hair, and with very piercing eyes. And one of them had a big book in his hands. And this guy was Michael. Metatron was there too. So the correlations between Joshua Tree, the pendant I purchased, and obviously that encounter was somehow related to Metatron. But Metatron in that group was the last person on my right, next to the other four. And Michael is the one that actually walked towards me. So when he walked towards me and gave me that book of life, he basically the book was open. And when I put my hands underneath it, and I'm giving you like the short version here,
sure.
I was like thrown into space, and I discovered that those archangels were then speaking to me. They were all silent all the way, and then they started speaking to me, saying that now they were going to be sharing the story or the history of time and space, which I didn't really know what that meant, but that's basically what they were trying to show me. And traveling through space, they almost like showed me the planets, and that it was, part of the Big Bang and all of that. But then they showed me some alien races along the way, like I saw like spaceships, and in a very fast way. But at the same time, they were showing me these spaceships and planets, and almost like describing what those beings were, and saying, these are ETs. But they have their own agenda, and these are the Pleiadians that you talk to, and those guys have been deceiving because they've been lying to you, because
really
your being as a soul being goes beyond them, and you just need to remember that. So they were trying to help me remembering who I was, trying to awaken me in a much profound way. way beyond what the Pleiadians shared with me. That, for all the stuff I lived through, dealing with Zo and my star family, that is my true star family from the Pleiades, and I do have that connection still always. But at the same time, I realized that they were making themselves look like they were more powerful and more intelligent and more advanced than we are, which is true in a way. But for us to also realize that we volunteered to help them, and in exchange, they were helping the light source to expand the consciousness of the universe. So we could basically not really live in fear and being in the void, and it was creating this balance of light and not so much disaster. But the emotions that they are learning from us, being on Earth, is something that they are learning from to understand who they are and how they can also raise their own frequency themselves. So it's really truly for their own agenda. And the ET agenda, which is very interesting too, is this alliance have their own genetic program, meaning that all the human genome is shared between all these ET races. And this is what was shared with me at that point. And that was pretty interesting because what it came out was the Pleiadians, for example, share DNA. They use certain DNA from different alien races in order for us to be hybrids on this planet. So if I'm from the Pleiades, I will have a higher percentage of Pleiadian DNA within my human genes right now, because that's how it's been programmed. If you look at some reptilians will also have more reptilians DNA in their genes, but these beings are no longer part of the alliance. They used to be a long, long time ago, but when they started to be part of this agenda that they wanted to control more and follow their own path, then obviously that was the idea that excluded them from the alliance. So the alliance kept a very heavy check on them and pushed them away and from the human agenda. And so when I understood that, it really made me feel that there was just a guinea pig amongst other human beings on the planet.
I was thinking the same exact thing when you were saying that. Like, I
Right.
don't really feel comfortable with the thought that we're just experiments for other races and stuff, even though,
Exactly.
a lot of the old stuff says that maybe we are. Well, maybe this body is, but I think there's a lot more to us than this body, and
Yes.
you are speaking about things that go back all the way to the teachings of Pythagoras and even Thoth and Egypt and stuff. And I just find it fascinating that, all this stuff was just thrown onto you and you had no idea about it. So, I
Right.
mean, I was going to ask you, like, do you think that, and I mean, honestly, that every human on the face of the earth has a family like that? Or are some of us just like, monkeys in a cage? Are we just experiments or what's going on here?
Not all. I think most people, yes, are hybrids. That's the way it's been presented to me. We all belong to different types of ET races, because at the end of the day, this is just an illusion that was placed for our collective consciousness, and whatever we see is based on this belief that this Earth is round and has a blue sky and a green grass, but at the end of the day, we learn that from the time we were born, from our own families. So it's been brought up from generations to generations, and we don't know any better, basically, because other races on Earth, such as cats or other animals, may be seeing things very differently than us. So they have a different perception because they basically vibrate at a higher or different frequency altogether. So It's all to do with frequencies at the end. So our frequency, our Earth frequency, only allows us to see certain things. But when we actually raise our frequency, when people are already saying, the time is accelerating and we're already experiencing something different, that is where the true answer is. For us to understand where we come from and to live in full awareness is basically avoiding the fear of the unknown, because the unknown is what really keeps us grounded into this reality. And if we understand that there is something more to it, that we can transcend this physical body to reconnect to the light beings that we are, and we all are, then we would understand that, yes, we are hybrids. Yes, we are helping ETs doing their own agenda. We are part of it. We volunteered for this experience. Bad or good doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, their agenda is way more complex than our human experiences. We suffer from wars and famine and all these problems on Earth. But they don't see that as such, because they know this is just part of a program. It seems true to us and very real, but at the same time, they learn from it because it's part of our human emotions. So good or bad, we generate way more emotions in such events that they learn from. And it may sound evil to you, but for them, we like I said, we are just an experiment, and they don't have the same emotions as we do. But what's interesting, and going back to Zoe, because, and I will just quickly close this parenthesis because it's still very important. When you ask if we're all hybrids or light beings, we are all light beings through ETs, but there are also some light beings that decided to come onto this planet as starseeds, basically, without going through the ETs. So bypassing the ETs, and therefore they are on their own. They're very ancient soul beings that will be coming over here to help in a big way. And such beings, could be anybody, but they still definitely have a much clearer path, because they don't have all these interferences and distractions that we do on many different levels. Not only we suffer from distractions of this planet, we suffer from distractions from the ET's agendas, but they basically have a much clearer path. It doesn't mean that they are protected from not being abducted as human beings, so they could still be abducted. So some ET races that are on a certain frequency, but still not as high as the light source, then those beings could still use that to abduct those human beings and to learn from it. Right. So that's basically what I'm trying to say is we just need to remember where we truly come from, and bypassing all of these distractions, because that's just another distraction in our lives, when we just simply have to remember who we are, accessing our higher self and getting the help from the light source is where we can truly reconnect to who we truly are, and really changing this reality, changing this collective consciousness. So,
I was going to ask you that too. Craig has asked it, and I was going to ask you as well, because we've heard this word before by other guests on the show, which you probably weren't aware of either, which I find amazing because it makes it more true to me. But what actually is a starseed?
Right. Well, I mean, basically, the way I see it, to me, there are different types of terms that people will use, like such as walk-ins, starseeds. And when I basically talk to the Pleiadians, they are the first ones who mention that word to me, saying you have to go back to the planet Earth and awaken the starseeds of the world, without any textbooks, any guides, just pretty much the way it was. Right. And the way it was given to me was starseeds are basically the beings that were genetically modified by the ET races to live on this planet with a certain mission that was just deeper than just simply living, having emotions, and die. Starseeds would basically feel that they have certain things to do in this timeline at this specific time with a certain purpose. Many of them may not necessarily know what it is. Many of us are really confused with our life path, of trying to succeed in life and having a 9-to-5 job and basically provide to our family and die. But there is way more to it than that. And the reason why we are all living in this timeline at this time right now is because we have a true purpose at this time. And that needs to change. And many, many people right now are already awakening to that. Our frequency is already changing. Like I said before, many people are already feeling this change of energy, and time is accelerating because time is being distorted as we speak. the timeline that we live on is very different from the timeline we were on 50 years ago. And that's exactly why more and more people now are more curious about the subject of ETs and trying to understand exactly who they are, where they come from. It's not so much where we come from, in our DNA, but really where we come from as light beings, because that's what we're currently awakening to. So that compared to the walk-ins, the way I see them as, is that the walk-ins are very ancient soul beings that decide to help humanity in a large way too, to come into this world as human beings. We don't really know how they were created. I've seen and I've talked to people who basically don't remember or don't have any real interactions with ETs, but feel that they remember, where they come from. They remember the light source. They remember when they were in the womb of their parents, because they projected themselves into this flesh and bone and decided to live this life. They are fully aware, awakened beings, and that's the most amazing interactions you can have in your life, because those beings still may not remember fully what they are supposed to be doing, but they are achieving things on this planet that are awakening us to compassion, to love, to unity. And we can see that from very young, bright, people. I just this morning I listened to an interview about this 21-year-old boy who went to the Great North to help the Inuits, trying to provide them with like greenhouses to grow vegetables, because food was becoming very, very expensive for the food to be brought up to the North Pole and so on. And so they decided to help out, and they are becoming very, very successful with it. And they will be ending up with basically the $700,000 budget to do more of these projects in certain locations. So on such large scale, you can see many projects happening up that will be triggering basically very life-changing experiences in many parts of the world. And the same, carry on. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what would you say to, like, this is totally different for me, talking to a guy like you who started out as an entrepreneur, doing things from a startup point of view that I would love to do, especially this day and age, from taking care of your basic needs, having a nice home, stuff like that. And now all of a sudden you're going down this path of spirituality, and it's almost like that's the way that we should do it, because a lot of the audience out there, a lot of my listeners, including myself and a lot of other people, are being pulled between trying to just survive and pay the bills and worry about this world, and also being pulled between, we know there's something more going on, and this over here is what we want to pursue, but this material existence is not letting us do it. Right?
You're right. And at the end of the day, you're right. I feel very fortunate that it happened to me at a time in my life where, I could just retire and I could just talk about this forever until I die, basically. But the thing is, you're right. I mean, it doesn't mean that I'm still free and clear of going and meditate on a Tibetan mountain for the rest of my life without caring about my family. So there is a certain reality that I still have to be careful and aware of, because my family is not really on the same level as I am. So I still need to feel grounded, and my wife is certainly over there to remind me of that, and my children too, because they all need us, and everybody needs their own family. So therefore, we need to be aware of that and still do our jobs, but still be opening ourselves up to something that is definitely more important. And there are certainly many people already now that are offsetting the work for many beings that are already opening up themselves to this new reality, and that's okay. Everybody needs to do their own thing in their own way. During my interview with Kerry Cassidy on Project Camelot, since then I had many encounters. Many people are approaching me from all over the world, and it's very interesting the kind of life choices everybody made. I met this couple who now lives in the south of France, between France and Spain, and they decided to retire from the IT world and now feel basically in a remote area, have their own permaculture gardens and really live simply, because that's the life choice they made. they basically had a complete life change. And I also spoke to a guy in Seattle the other day who just approached me out of the blue, not really knowing why. He just basically heard my interview out of the blue one morning on YouTube and decided to call me. He felt very sheepish about it, and we talked for like a few hours, and he felt like he had to change his lifestyle too, and working in the IT business, and he felt like he wanted to have a change and discover the consciousness world, and still had to provide to his family, but he still didn't really shy away from that awakening because it's currently happening to him. And while he still was interested in, UFOs and such topics in the past, it was just a hobby. Now he's really opening himself up to the idea of branching out to something in a much deeper way, either meditating some more, trying to understand the tools that will be available through the ENSU website or on the internet to learn more about, what it means to open yourself up to consciousness and to the spirituality world. And that's the most beautiful thing that, could happen at this time, because we need more and more of these people. I had, vets, doctors, lawyers contacting me and, thanking me for being courageous enough to talk about this topic on the radio and on Skype interviews, because, it gives them the courage to come out themselves and to talk to their friends and family about what happened to them. Because, many people live in that fear of sharing their experiences and opening themselves up to something that is greater than themselves and their friends and family. And this is how we can really truly change this collective consciousness. So we can't feel afraid by this change. We just have to embrace it in the best way we can. Yeah. It doesn't mean that everybody will have the same luxuries and potential, but the internet now, we already have the luxury of going on the internet and learn a great deal of stuff that we can learn from, compared to people living in North Korea, for example. We only have one TV channel, absolutely zero access to the internet, and we are killed if they even watch the Hollywood movie. I mean, this is the reality of today. And so when we realize that we can offset the work of so many people who don't have access to these tools, we basically can help in many ways without even knowing it, because just by opening ourselves up to the spirituality, we will definitely be able to help others this way, by changing this collective consciousness and making people more aware, more compassionate about what's going on. And that's exactly the way I'm seeing things. And this, to me, will change within the next 5 years.
Right on. I believe it will, too. I mean, we're coming up on a break here, and we want to talk about some of the new stuff you want to talk to us about. And
sure.
They're hitting me up in the chat room to talk to you about the black goo. So we want to talk about that, too. So, but sure. I do want to say on that note, the internet, I believe, is a tool that consciousness has created for many things. I mean, and it's cool to see, that you're using that, within Suho is really awesome. That it's not like you're trying to sell a ShamWow. You're using it for something real, and something that's going to change the planet. And man, that's cool. And
thank you.
So we're going to take a break. We're going to be right back with Sebastien Martin. We're open up the phone, so take your questions. And it's been great so far. I don't know about this black goo thing. I haven't heard it, but I can't wait to hear it. So you guys stick around. We'll be right back. And we're back. Man, it's been a pretty interesting conversation so far. This is Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop, and we're here with Sebastien Martin, and he's been telling us some great stories about awakening. So come on, man. I got to hear this thing about the black goo. That's a heck of a title, by the way.
Sure.
What's up with that?
Well, this is the term that was used when I first mentioned it on the radio show with Dave. And, the term is basically something to put a reference to what people already know about, because it's more of a visual than what it truly is. There are many negative connotations to black goo. And again, I read that Alfred Weber compares it to the AI, negative AI that exists. And I will actually be going on a radio show with Alfred next month, and I will be talking to him about that at length as well. And going back to my experience, when I was under hypnosis, I was going back to when I was 6 months old, unexpectedly from when I was abducted at 16. And I went back in time almost completely blacked out under hypnosis. And when I opened my eyes under hypnosis, I woke up being in the body of a 6-month-old baby. And I was immersed into this cylinder that had a glass dome, and I could see through it, and through the dome, I could see those Pleiadians that were outside looking at me in a very stern way. But I was immersed into this black liquid. Now, people will call it black goo, but it's more about a black liquid that certainly had more of an organic feel to it, that was more intelligent, very silk-like feel to it. It didn't really feel gooey whatsoever or like tar. It was very, very soft and very light. Yet my whole body was immersed into it. Like, I mean, I could see my toes and my arms in a way, or my hands at least. Right. And when I was in that cylinder, at one point the liquid started to move by itself, and it really started to move like not like in a wave or something. It was definitely more slower and had a certain pattern to it. And it made me scared, I have to say. I mean, I was 6 months old. I was living, I have the feelings of a 6-month-old baby as a 35-year-old man that was regressed to that age. And that's how it felt. I felt like I was living in a body of a 6-month-old baby, and it felt scary. And I was, isolated. I was isolated, and actually started to cry as a 35-year-old man under hypnosis, because it was a traumatic experience to me, to that extent. More because I was afraid, more than the actual action of the goo. It didn't really affect me. It actually felt more like healing. At that point, what I already discussed before is in real life. Obviously, I had a skin condition that when I was born, my skin fell off, and it was a very strange situation where when I was conceived, my mother had twins, and yet the twins were not the same age. We had like 4 or 5 weeks apart from one another, and she had an hemorrhage, and she lost the other baby, and I stayed in the womb, and they had to dehydrate the other fetus with some chemicals every single month. And so when I was delivered, the mummified fetus that came out was following me, and then I basically, my skin completely fell off my whole body, and I was raw. I mean, red, bright red, and screaming like you wouldn't believe. And I was screaming all the time for 6 months because I was seeing doctors. I was seeing doctors all across Europe, and after 6 months of treatments and all sorts of stuff they were trying to give me, never worked. And after 6 months, there was this man from Switzerland who said, well, it has to come back. We can't help you, pretty much. And I never really thought about it when I was hypnotized, but this is when it came back, to me afterwards, is that when I was obviously in that cylinder in space, by the way, I was on a spacecraft, I was being healed. And that's how the black liquid, healed my DNA somehow. And so what's interesting also is the test labs that they did when I was 6 months old, or when I was born, show that in my DNA I had missing proteins, and so there was some missing links within my DNA as well when I was born. I feel very healthy now. My skin is very nice, and I don't have any issues with it. But it's just the way it was, and so. Yeah, the black liquid to me was not a very negative experience, as you can imagine. And I think the way I described it on Spreaker right now for answering a few of those comments is that my experience with it was more, it felt like the Pleiadians were able to project the right intention for that liquid to act like a beneficial tool. But maybe to some extent, the same liquid or the same technology could potentially be used by other ET races to very different purposes that could be way more negative. So like I was saying, it's like sending bad vibrations or bad energy to a plant in the lab. You can see that this plant will die sooner than the plant in the other room that will be subjected to love and compassion and very good emotions, and will actually thrive. the same way as you will send bad energy or hatred to water, and the water particles will completely get distorted under a microscope.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And if you send good vibrations to the water, then the water will be like, it will create the most beautiful pattern you could imagine. And that's exactly the way it felt like to me with that black liquid. So, putting it a label as a black goo to me is very obviously negative. That this is what the connotation has been put on by many people talking about it from experience. And as you can imagine, there are a lot of bad experiences and people living on drama and relying on the AI and the threat of that. And to me, that's another example of living in fear and being distracted for something that is very negative. We have to extract ourselves from that and go beyond that, because there's not enough understood about what those technologies could do and can help with. This is, again, my experience with it. Someone else will have a very different experience if they seen it as a very negative, right, tool. But in my experience, I understand that you can basically manipulate it the way you can, especially that if we understand that we all live within a program. So again, the connotation of AI, which is what you can hear on Cosmic Disclosure right now, to me, there's a large crowd of people who are being misled in believing that AI is so negative because that's what is being said right now. But if we believe that we live within a program and we live within an illusion, then what is truly AI?
Right.
I mean, if we are,
we're no different, really.
We are no different. The way I'm seeing it again is you could have viruses within the program, and those viruses are still part of the same program that just took a different route. And so, this bad AI still exists. I would agree with this. But again, it's being short-sighted in believing and putting everything into one bag and saying, this is bad and this is good. This duality system.
It's a polar mindset. We get real polar on things a lot.
Yeah, exactly. When in fact, the same kind of interview I had with Richard Dolan when we met in Arizona is the reality of aliens, and our reality is way more complex than we actually truly believe, because there are things that we don't understand. And again, most of the time when we are frightened by something that we don't understand, this is like being faced with the unknown. If we don't understand it, we try to kill it.
Yeah.
We basically demonize something that we don't understand because
we've been doing that since the beginning of time.
Exactly. So I think we just need to broaden our horizons a bit, trying to embrace what it truly means to live within a program, and what is AI and what is the black goo. Because I think, if that's the term that you want to use, that's fine by me. But what I'm saying is, there are certainly some bad experiences and some good experiences with it. My experiences was very positive. It obviously helped regenerate my DNA and my skin. I don't feel an evil person. I don't think I'm here to, basically demonize people or
take over the world.
To scare. Exactly. I'm trying to stay very humble about my own experiences, and I know I'm not the only one. I'm just like one out of millions out there that are trying to do the right thing, and it feels right to me. And at the end, this is what we need to open ourselves to, because it's very important.
I totally agree.
So that's pretty much what I had to say about that, and I will welcome any kind of comments or questions about this if you have. Yeah.
I got to say something real quick. The phone lines that I use, the one where I got 5 phone lines or whatever, is giving me crazy error messages right now. So I have an emergency phone. If you want to call in, thank God for that. It's 501-777-5631. 501-777-5631 if you want to call in. Or you can ask something, drop in the chat room. It don't matter. But so here recently, Sebastian, as I'm learning about your stuff, you start sitting, and I don't know if it's cool to talk about, but you start sending me stuff that, hey, maybe somebody's on my property or so. So what's been going on with you lately, man? Have people been approaching you? Are you starting to get the same thing that's happening to Shirleti? I mean, he was approached in the street the other day.
Okay, not to that extent. I mean, I still live on Vancouver Island, and yes, I have local people approaching me now, which is quite amazing. Like I said, there were some vets and doctors now even leaving very close by, who would just been emailing me saying, "Oh my God, you just live in very close by to me, like 50 kilometers away from me."
Yeah.
So it's been quite remarkable in that sense. And since my interview with Kerry Cassidy, mainly I had people, like I said, from all over the world approaching me and sharing their own experiences. I also some weird experiences. I mean, way before Kerry Cassidy's interview, when I just pretty much after Dave Cruz's radio show on Beyond the Strange, when I came back, my neighbor basically called me up and said, I feel that there was potentially like a burglar stopping by your gates, and they arrived in a black van, and they basically had no license plates in the back, and all of a sudden someone opened the door, and a guy in a black suit and black glasses and weird hat, just stood up next to the the van and just stared at the gate. And my property is 13 acres, so I've got lots of land, and I don't live right close to the gate. But he basically was just apparently staring at the gate and walked back in, and they just drove off. The engine never stopped. So that was the first time I had the first encounter with what people would call Men in Black. And so that was not really affecting me personally, because while they were there, they were almost trying to say, we're here, we're showing up at 3:00 in the morning. And my neighbor woke up because his dog barked, and he basically looked through the window and saw them just outside our gate. So it was a very quick experience that, I didn't have any physical encounter with them. But at the same time, this was not the first time. Afterwards, just before I went to Mexico and before my interview in Arizona, I had a strange dream where I was, sleeping, and I was basically felt like I was coming out of my body. And I traveled through my corridor in my house, and through the front door, which is a glass door, I saw a car that was parked there, not stopped. It was a small car, not a huge one. And when I was looking at the license plate looked scrambled. And there was a guy inside that had like large shoulders. He was pretty big. And he had this kind of haircut that was almost like a middle-aged type of haircut, but very bushy, and it looked like a wig. And it felt like he looked at me, turned around to look, like he felt my presence in front of that door, and decided to leave. So the car, drove off, and I basically went through the door and followed him on the driveway. And as I reached the top of the driveway, we have a secondary driveway going down onto our ponds and, onto our farm. And I could see a black van driving up and, basically joining up with the car, and they both left. So, and then, I went back into my body, and I slept very well. I woke up in the morning. I remembered it very vividly. And I just wanted to make sure. So we had fresh snow, light snow outside, and I basically walked onto that secondary driveway that we never use in the winter because the farm is dormant and it could be dangerous with icy patches and so on. And when I walked down there, I saw tire tracks on the fresh snow. And so that kind of confirmed my dream in that sense, that somehow I was awoken to that potential threat, and something warned me in the middle of the night. So I always feel protected that way, which is kind of nice. Then I went to Arizona, and I'm a cigar smoker. So I was having a cigar with some friends outside, and just before the banquet, my partner there went outside for a last smoke on her own, and there was hardly anybody outside. And she saw two guys in black suits with hats and sunglasses on, and collecting the remaining of my cigar with my cigar sleeve, putting it in a Ziploc bag or a bag. And as they were about to leave the scene, one of the guys was called by my friend, and she said, what do you think you are doing here? And because she went back to our smoking spot, and the guy turned around and said, we know who you are. and she completely freaked out, and she felt like she had to walk away. She felt, endangered in some way. And as she was walking back towards the building, she just saw three guys. One of the guys that was waiting close to the van, and the two guys, and they left in the van and just left the scene. Eric, the awakening man, was on site as well. Really? Not outside, but inside. And after I shared my story with him and John Polk as well, Reverend John Polk, he shared with me that picture of that guy who was in the room before we went to the banquet.
Seen that picture. I remember him talking about that now.
Yeah. And the guy was like in a black suit, and he had the hat on and black glasses on. And it was like 7 p.m. and it was getting dark outside. I think it was already dark outside. And I don't know, I think, yes, one of the guys there was one of the guys outside picking up my cigar for what my friend talked to me about. But because it was only one person, I still believed her for sure because she felt spooked by it. But then the next day, I went to have lunch with James Fox, who was the producer of the Phoenix Lights documentary. And we were having lunch together, and I kind of reminded him of that story. And he said, "Oh yeah, another person, a speaker at this event at the UFO conference, saw them too, and she's called Erica Lux. She's the next director for MUFON, and she was on site and also saw those beings. And so I felt compelled to contact her. And after the events, I managed to get hold of her, and we had a very long chat, on the phone afterwards. And we felt that something was going on, and she validated what was going on over there." There was a lot of stuff going on, lots of intelligence, and obviously some Men in Black's presence too. So, but again, it's something that even if they were taking my cigar for DNA, I really don't care. It's it's not something, they may want to make a clone out of it, and who knows? And I really don't care. At the end of the day, I just stay true to myself, and I don't feel spooked by any of that. So I just go on with it, and. Unfortunately, after my interview with Kerry and I came back to Canada, the same day I came back, I didn't know any of this, but I was told that apparently the Men in Black are bald men. I don't know if you heard that before. And that's how it was presented to me. And so the night I came back, I went back in bed, and I decided to switch off my side light. And I was about to go to sleep, but the second I switched off the light, this bald man started to walk towards me on the side of the bed and walking towards me in a very threatening way. And we have a large bedroom. So I basically jumped out of bed, and I was fully awake. I jumped out of bed, and I was like standing right in front of him. And automatically, I've used what was unknown to me until Kerry Cassidy said, what you are experiencing is you're awakening your Kundalini every time you have like a shiver in your spine, and you can basically do all sorts of crazy stuff with it. And I always use my Kundalini to protect myself and doing other things I could talk after. But on that moment, when I stood up in front of that guy, I could see his bald head glistening in the dark. It was a very strange light. It almost felt like he was coming out of a portal to be in this room, to be with us. And my wife was next to me, and she wasn't even fully asleep yet, but she didn't know what was going on because it was pitch black. And so when I stood up in front of that guy, I've used my Kundalini to awaken my Kundalini. I was like, feel the shiver in my spine, and I was calling upon the white light from the light source, and I blasted it with him. And very intuitively speaking, and obviously I could feel that the whole being shattered in front of me, and I could see the orange-red particles flying right in front of me in the room, and the whole thing disappeared. And when I went back into bed, and then my wife said, "Oh, what just happened?" And I said, "Oh, nothing, honey. Just go back to sleep, go to sleep." And that was the experience I had. But once again, it hasn't happened since. It's just one of these experiences, and after talking to people from overseas and all over the place, I was told, and again, I haven't really looked into that in a deep way, but I was approached by many people who claim to be part of the ACIO. I don't know if you know this group, or the Kruger organization. And this is something to me that was kind of new. And those guys said, well, the Men in Black are part of the 6th division of the ACIO. So whatever that means.
I don't know what that means. I got to be honest with you. Never heard of it.
Right.
So
okay. And so the ACIO apparently is like it's called the Advanced Contact for Intelligence Organization or something like that. And there are some people talking about it on YouTube, and I've been trying to watch some videos briefly, not fully. But there are some people approaching radio shows with it and talking about ACIO and Kruger, and they claim to be part of this alien agenda that's trying to control the ET presence on Earth, and are all scattered all over the planet. And so the Men in Black are part of this organization, and that's the reason why you can see Men in Black in all sorts of countries. And how can they be in every single country if they're not part of one organization, or do they simply travel to one place? So this is what probably the question we should have is, when something happens with the military or something else, how can they just show up so quickly in one place? I mean, I know that, and I've heard that there are hybrid beings too, that they are partly human and partly ETs. And they are obviously trying to erase people's memories when they have very first encounters with people or with ETs. And so that, to me, again, doesn't mean much at this stage because I don't really know much about it. But it feels that there's something beyond that we should probably explore.
So somebody knows something. Yeah, that basically.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes.
I want to know, like you hear a lot of stuff about the cabal or these people are running the earth and New World Order and Illuminati, but or if it's just corporate interest, but somebody just in probability alone has to know something about what you're talking about and is definitely trying to keep it from us. And you might have met that group that's trying to protect all that stuff,
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, I simply don't want to feel, again, like special or being, treated like, I'm someone special for them.
Sure.
And sure enough, though, they have been reaching out to me after my interview, and they were saying, well, we know who you are, and, we believe that you're a protector of the timeline. And, obviously, yes, it feels right to me, the way I want to protect this timeline from going astray, from having more negative timelines arising from the impact that our government can do with the help of the reptilians and so on and so on. I mean, I've seen all these timelines, by the way. So this is not new to me. I may not have mentioned it on the radio or on Skype interviews before, but, the reptilian agenda is definitely real and to me very present. And, you hear that, here and there that, the reptilians, the threat is going away and we won't be, threatened by them anymore. Well, I disagree with that. I think that the threat is very real, and again, because we see the world, in a specific timeline, thinking, well, this is very linear, but time doesn't mean much in space. When you think about the different types of timelines that we are looking at, we are into one timeline right now. What I believe is, and for what I've seen for the future, for our future, is by raising our frequency, we will be able to change this reality, and we will be able to change the world. And when you look at the rainbow prophecies, for example, in the Indian cultures, for saying, or they are saying, and they're pretty much saying the same thing all across the North American continent, when they are saying that all the nations will gather in a circle, like the white, red, black, white, yellow, coming back into a circle, and they describe, they don't mention about reality or timeline, but what they say is very profound. They're actually saying that the trees will be able to grow overnight.
Oh, wow.
So if you are not living in an illusion, and this reality is made up for us, what else could it be? I mean, truly, if you think of a seed, surely if you plant a seed in the ground, it takes for more than one night for a tree to grow into a mature tree with leaves and so on. So it's really by changing the gravity, the laws of physics, the way we know them, that truly this is how the collective consciousness will radically change overnight, because we can't just simply do it gradually. Right now we are raising our frequency to welcome this change. And when you even go deeper, you can even see that in many biblical texts or, in many, religious books, that basically the time of change, which will come into what we call the apocalypse or the Revelation books. Because when you see that, yes, it will be the end of one life, like one reality. We are going to be jumping from one reality to another, and everything that we know from this reality will just change and vanish over time.
So Catalina from the chat room wants to know, because you've talked about it a few times, what's a timeline look like? When you say I've seen all these timelines, what does that mean?
Yes. Well, I've lived through many timelines. Like I've seen, times of change. So like when we go from this 2017 year to 2050, and I've seen that. I've lived through it, and I even seen my own death at the age of 90 years old if I wanted to die. But it's not the same way that we die today. It's just basically the fact that we now truly understand how DNA works, and we can reshape our physical bodies the way we want, and we can look the way we want. And death doesn't really mean much, because once we reconnect to our true light beings, where we are, the physical body, we are multidimensional beings at the end, and so therefore we can change that reality once we reached up the next vibration or next frequency. So that's the way I understood it in this timeline. This is what we're working for today. This is the positive timeline, the way I'm seeing it. Now, there are some other realities where the frequency will be prevented, because we won't be able to raise our frequency simply because of the amount of distractions we have in this world. And there are some way more negative timelines where, for example, the Draco race will be coming onto the earth and killing everybody else or enslaving everybody else.
Oh,
and that's a very negative timeline that I don't want to go into. And I have seen it. I've been there. So, it's not part of this timeline. So that's what I'm trying to say. The same way as I've seen, the earthquakes and the tsunamis of the past when I discussed it. This is a potential timeline too, and it may still arrive. What I'm saying is it may be delayed, because while these changes may be necessary to awaken ourselves to the next or to the higher frequency, to minimize our situation, because really when you think about it, we keep creating junk more and more and more and more to fulfill our lives. We get larger houses, we get more belongings because we feel that we need it. We crave it to feel, more important. But in fact, when you think about it, these are all distractions. We are building up more and more distractions to keep us busy and extracting us from this new reality that is actually way more simpler. We don't need as many rubbish in our life to feel content and fulfilled. Some people in poor countries live with way less than we do, and they feel more happy than we are. So in a simpler way, this is the real timeline. We need to go back to basics in terms of our feelings, but also seeing what is potentially available to us in the future. This is the right timeline to be in. The more we fill our lives with junk and materialistic stuff, we are definitely going to be suffering from that in the long run, because this is going to be used against us the same way as technology is going to be used against us. Television, media, everything is bombarding us with stuff that we feel like we need, but we are creatures of comfort at the end, because we are anchoring ourselves into this lower vibration. Once we discover new realities, all of this won't matter anymore. We're going to be looking at it, almost like laughing, thinking, how stupid have I been? It's just, and that's pretty much what happened to me in my life. I'm trying to get rid of the junk I had because I just realized this is not important in my life. That's pretty much it.
Sebastian, I wonder, and I know you were saying before the show, which I admire, honesty. You were like, look, man, I'm a bit of a lazy reader, to be honest with you. You're an
yes.
You're an experiencer, which is pretty cool. So
right.
A lot of the stuff resonates with me. When I tell everybody I had that experience with the star I saw that kind of beamed down at me, I've told John Polk about it and everything, and then it wheeled around. I was listening to that book on audio on YouTube called The Emerald Tablets of Thoth, and it's almost like everything that you talk about is in those tablets. And these
okay.
supposedly go thousands and thousands of years ago, before the mystery schools ever started, basically is what started the mystery schools and religions and all that.
Right.
But
well,
it's crazy that you've never heard it.
No, I never heard about it, but I'm not really talking about something that's new because it's part of my intuition and what feels right to me. You'd have talked to me about this 5 years ago, I would have laughed at you because I was not awakened and I was not spiritual at all. In fact, like we were talking about this before the show, when certain people use certain words, like using a certain vocabulary in a New Age segment. I was thinking, well, this resonates with me. Well, what does that mean? I was just another part of rubbish. I just didn't care. But now I fully embrace it and I fully understand it because I've experienced it for sure. But I'm receiving more downloads every single day. It's becoming more and more urgent because yes, the timeline is real. It's happening right now, and we simply don't want to miss out on it. We need to jump on the train, and it's a running train, and we need to jump on it because we are all part of it. 7 billion people are part of this train. We need to be on that. And that's how it feels like to me today.
So do you get these downloads? Well, actually I wanted to ask you this because Craig asked this a while ago. When you had the visions, like when you were talking about the floor shaking and stuff like that.
Right.
Now I have visions in my mind's eye, like I can see and actually smell things. But was it that kind of vision, or was like you flashed into a dream and it was really happening for a second?
For what I'm talking about now, about the true message rather than the expenses? Are you talking about?
Well, just how you had when you first started having visions, because he's wondering if it's like deja vu.
No, not at all. No, it's not like, I think I've experienced this. No. I was conscious of when I had a vision. It could happen at night. It could happen during the day. When it's during the day, obviously, I'm wide awake and I'm just like walking with a glass of water in my hand, and all of a sudden, the floorboard shakes and falls under my feet, and the house shakes and everything. I was seeing it. I was living it. I was in that moment at that time. And then everything stops, like boom, and then I just regain possession of my body in a sense, thinking, wow, I'm just coming out of a strange dream, right, in a way. And then I walk back towards my wife, and I just thought of this. So that's pretty much how visions happen during the day. I can see them while talking to people or while driving. I had things happening to me where I could see portals opening up right in front of my eyes while I was driving on the road. That started up as a droplet of water and then it expanded and taking the whole road and beyond, like over the trees, where I could see through it, but it was like water and it was moving and almost like a Stargate. And I was driving and I could feel that this is not something I should welcome in my life. And I've used again my Kundalini and I placed my right hand towards it, and I just made it shatter again. I made it go away because it was strange to me, and even if it was brought forward for me, I just didn't like it, and I didn't feel ready for whatever encounter that was going to be. If it was going to be positive or negative, I didn't care. I just wanted to get rid of it.
So all this stuff is coming natural to you. It sounds like,
Well, yeah,
I study books on Reiki and Kundalini and meditation and things like that, and you're talking about just raising your right hand up and getting rid of something. I guess because you understand the energy in your body a little bit better, probably because from your birth.
Yes, it's just natural to me. I don't think about it. None of that. None of the symbols. Even like the like touching your fingers, can't remember the term for it, but when like in Buddhism, you can have certain placement of fingers, the madras I think it's called or something. Then I just know those moves naturally, even to heal my body, just to feel better, for example. I never read it, I just know it. It's just annoying, and the Kundalini aspect was really awakened to me in 2011. And the same way as many people saw the Mayan calendar as the end of the world, it's actually the end of an era and the beginning of a new one. That is the true awakening of the human race. This is what the real Mayan calendar meant. This is when people are starting to awaken to this new era. People call it the age of Aquarius and so on. But this is why, time is accelerating, time is changing, and it's a gradual move. But we are within that zone where it's so important right now to move towards that zone, because the old age is dying, and that's what we need to be aware of. We can't just keep it alive for the sake of memory, and because it's filled with negativity at the same time. We had bad experiences. We just have to move forward with the society we live in, the stuff of the economy and the society with the monetary system, the way we have it is becoming more mad, more stupid at the same time. It's all driven by zeros and ones. It's not even real. It's another illusion of our world, of this existence that we are now awakening to. So moving into this simpler world of many people would even call it the Ubuntu project in South Africa, with Michael Tellinger talking about it. Well, that to me makes total sense, that the truck and the change is more something that maybe we'll have to move towards if something radical will change in the world, through disasters or catastrophes or something. I'm just hoping that within this timeline, we wouldn't have to go through this to experience the higher frequency. I'm just hoping that the change even would not even happen, because we won't even need it. Because once we understand that we are multidimensional beings and we don't need to eat whatever is out there, as long as it's filled with energy and positive energy, then we will be fine. We won't have to rely on, again, a change and power, and having those kind of power plays between people. This is, again, things of the past. We just have to extract ourselves away from that and move forward with a much simpler message. That's the way it feels like to me.
Right on. That makes a lot of sense. It's, when I read a book called Conversations with God, and, he keeps asking the God person in the story, like, what are we here to learn? What are we here to learn? And, the being or God or whoever it was that was talking to him said, you're not here to learn anything. You're here to remember,
That's right.
And
That's true.
Think about that word, remember. It's a play on word, remember where you came from. So I believe you're right. I believe we all have this stuff inside of us. It's just we are distracted,
Yes, completely, and more. So this is why it's so important to, again, listen to our intuition. Whatever makes sense. Follow your true path, follow your visions, or follow your inner voice even, because that's what I've decided to do all my life, even without knowing it, even in my businesses. All the decisions I've made were from, listening to my intuition, my gut feeling, because that rang true to me. And I think we should be paying more attention to this, more than logic even, because sometimes, you might discover something new, totally different, totally unusual, that may lead to something very beautiful. And it's always part of an experience. We can't be afraid of the unknown just, because we are afraid of not trying. We have to try. We have to experience new things. This is where the true challenge is in life. We can't always live in fear in this 9-to-5 job and, feeling like sheeple. We have to become supreme beings, because we are all sovereign beings. And that's what I keep repeating. We have to remember that we are all one, and we may be just mirroring each other in everybody's experiences at different times. But at the end of the day, it should resonate with everybody, because we are all part of the same experience.
So you were talking about you just leave your body earlier, or you astral travel is something that we talk about a lot on the show. I mean, a lot. Yes. And you're saying that it just comes easy for you. Do you have, I don't know, any advice for us that are studying this? Because we currently, as an audience together, are kind of studying this stuff right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've read comments from people emailing me saying that they've used different tools to achieve that, through meditation, through listening to certain musics with certain frequencies. I believe any of that can help, but personally, I just do it naturally. I don't even have to listen to a specific music. I just would basically could close my eyes and just go. I mean, basically,
God, it's so not fair.
And I've been doing that for a long time, and even when I was 16, I did that for fun with a girl. I tried to to please for seeing what she had in her room, and it just happened very quickly and very easily. But when you dream and you come out of your body every time you fall asleep. So you can practice lucid dreaming. There are many tools out there to achieve this. I've done it many times, and just, it's a beautiful experience. I've actually met people that, I've met people in Australia that I've met in a room that I spooked because they thought I was a ghost. And those things are experienced because I came out of my body and I was a light being showing up in a room. It was a house for sale, would you believe? And this couple walked in thinking that they were exploring the bedroom, and I was in the ceiling, and they saw something coming from the ceiling, and I basically landed down to speak to them. And they got spooked out, and they just left the room.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
But I knew where I was. I traveled to Australia from Canada, and it was daylight over there, and I could see the landscape outside through the window and everything. It was very, very vivid. I mean, those kind of experiences are beautiful experiences to live through. And when you start controlling those experiences, where you can see your hands and you can see your energetic body, it's an amazing experience. And you actually interact people, good and bad. I mean, I had some encounters with very dark forces, and that's the reason why when I'm being approached with from people who are telling me, how do you do this, and I always again say, when you do astral travel or lucid dreaming or something like that, you should always know how to protect yourself. And like for me, I'm using Kundalini, I'm using the light source. I already know ways of protecting myself, and I'm also protected. But there are some people who don't know how to do it, and so they will venture into these experiences the same way as they will do Ouija boards, not really tapping into something that could be very unusual. I wouldn't say dark, but I would say where there are some very heavy, complex powers at play that could impact their lives for forever. And so everybody needs to be cautious in whatever they do. So when you venture into those realms, you certainly have to prepare yourself, and you just have to know how. I mean, you can't just decide to venture from one dimension to another, not knowing how to come back to your true origin, because you could also get lost along the way. It happens.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I know you wanted to call in. I can't get the phones to work. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to send them a nasty email, though. I can tell you that, because I pay good money for those. I pay good money for those phones, man. You pay money for something, you want it to work. So,
right.
But yeah, I mean, I guess maybe, you know what it might be, Sebastian? It might be my over fascination with it that's keeping me from it, because when it happened, I turned around and looked at myself sleeping, and I couldn't believe it. It was so easy when it happened, like swimming,
Yes, that's right.
The more I try to do it, the less it happens. It's weird,
Yes, but it becomes very easy once you know how, and there are very different layers. And the same way as you can explore different dimensions, different timelines, you can really travel through space. Doing astral travel is really limitless. What I'm saying is, you just have to be cautious who you meet along the way, because there are some, less positive, beings out there that, would try to take advantage of that. And so this is something that could impact your life. You could, many people have entities. We talk about implants, like ethereal implants. All of these things could be grabbed along the way, and when you meet people on the street. But you can also have way more damage when you come out of your body, and at night, or when you voluntarily want to do it. Then that's how how you need to protect yourself this way. People talk about power animals. Like I can read that from Catalina.
Yeah.
That's one way of doing it, but it's not all. I mean, everybody reacts to different protection methods, or better. Some people will be using
banishing rituals. That works. Use it and help with the angelic forces.
Yeah, crystals is another one. There are many different methods out there, but you need to basically use one method that resonates with you. I'm using the word resonate again, but this is exactly what you should be doing: is trying to use the right method for you, because you never know, right? You never know.
No, but I think it's cool that when I tell you what I'm going to do when I get out of this lumpy body of mine again. I'm gonna come find you. I'm gonna go find these men in black. And I seen the picture, by the way. It is a little creepy looking, man. These guys are.
I know, coming out into this room, and you could feel that all of those guys are trying to be interesting and just trying to show off and do these sort of things. But it was, I know it was deep. It was deeper than that. And after the interview with Kerry Cassidy, her server got hacked, which delayed the interview for a week. My server got hacked as well, so my website was hacked. Lots of weird things, happened. The same day, like I said, I had the Men in Black encounter in my bedroom. So those things happen, but it doesn't mean that you have to live in fear for the same reason. To me, the attacks never affected me. I've heard stories from people who've been approaching me with Men in Black attacks, and they basically felt that their body was vibrating for days on end after they actually touched them. And I never had that feeling because I was fully protected beforehand. Like I had the warnings, I was fully protected, and therefore, I was okay. But some less fortunate people, shared their experiences themselves with me, and it really changed them forever. I mean, some of them felt that they completely lost their power in a way. All the stuff that they were able to do in the past, are no longer to their reach. They can't do it anymore. So to that extent, trying to welcome them and trying to fight them is not the reason. This is not what people should be doing. It's just trying to stay within your own light, your own truth, and trying to reach to that new frequency. Because again, the Men in Black is another distraction. We just have to stay away from them.
Do you think that the Pleiadians protect us at all, or is their agenda just to figure out what love and emotion is?
The Pleiadians, for me, are protecting us. I don't think they are protecting other races. I think, everybody who are part of the Alliance would be protected by their own ET race. They're all benevolent, ETs. They're probably more benevolent ETs than malevolent ETs. But once again, I wouldn't say that, again, the duality system of, good and bad ETs, there are people with very complex agendas. So like I said about emotions, for them, they're only seeing the disasters on Earth and learning from the emotions we are experiencing in a much deeper way. And that helps them with their own agenda for raising their own frequency, because they can then recreate a new world based on that new frequency that they don't have today. Their original planet is gone. It's been destroyed through war. And they are basically diplomat people and warriors as well at the same time. So, you can't say they are all benevolent beings. There are some Pleiadians who have very dark agendas too. The same way as you have good reptilians and bad reptilians. But at the same time, they have different agendas. So where you fall between the cracks, if you want to receive help from them, sure, there are many alien races wanted to help us, because this is what those beings want us to do. They want us to raise our vibration as much as theirs, because that way we can help the collective consciousness to change, and the universal consciousness as well, which we don't really talk about much. Right. And that would help expand the universe compared to the void, compared to the inexistence. And the war, and if the Draco wants control and wants to destroy things along the way, it creates an imbalance. And we live within one universe, but when you do the math and you basically add all these universes together, there is a balance happening in the multiverse or the omniverse, and that's what needs to remain. We can't just go one way or the other. We have to respect that balance.
Man, I got to start doing a 3-hour show, man. It's just not long enough not to be able to talk to people like you.
Right.
I don't know, and I hope I don't sound dumb when I ask you this, but I know it means something. What does Nsuho mean?
Nsuho means consciousness in Igbo language, which is an old African tribe, and they have this word for thousands of years in their language, and it's a very interesting word that I felt connected to when I saw it, because it's a very complex word, but at the same time very ancient word. And for ancient tribes to have that word already within, I mean, this is like the largest tribe of Africa. The Igbo tribe is there are many people in the US and Canada, around the world, that are actually linked to the Igbo tribe. So it's interesting to know that they were already interested about the consciousness aspect, thousands of years ago, and that's what I felt connected to. I felt that we have to go back to this simple five-letter word instead of the word consciousness, which is very deep and long. I just had connections with the word Ensuo myself. That's why I've used it.
It's pretty cool. It catches you. It's got a good energy. It's got a good vibe to it, man. And you can also, like, if people can't find the website, they can go to Consciousness Plus too, right? Yes.
So I've got multiple domain names that will link to ensuo.com. Consciousnessplus.com is one of them, but yes, that's the way people can browse the web and search through that. Yeah.
Well, we're coming to the end of the show, unfortunately. And since we have the network, we can't do overtime and stuff. But what do you got coming up here in the future? You got any events or interviews you got coming up?
Yes. So I do have an interview with Alfred Lambermont Weber in Canada in April. And I'm actually heading off to Contact in the Desert in May. I think a lot of people listening to this show are already going over there, which is great. I love going to this event. And I'm hoping that I will be part of. I've been asked to be a speaker in many events already, even one in the UK by Kerry Cassidy, but I couldn't make it because it was not the right timing. I will be in France when that event happens. I will still be in Europe, but I just can't go. So hopefully by next year I will be able to assist to more events and be a speaker to more events in America and Canada, and potentially even create new ones. What's also interesting is on the 27th of March coming up, I've got Laura Hazanauer coming to Canada to my place, and I will be filming her for doing a 16-episode segment on Ensuo that I will be providing for free on Ensuo. And we're going to be talking about consciousness. So we are going to be doing great interviews together. And that's going to be the beginning of a series of interviews that we'll be doing.
Well, man, that's awesome. We're thinking about doing an event at Giant Rock, and if we do that, we'd love to have you come out and speak, man.
Sure. Sounds good.
We're thinking about slapping one together. And that's it, guys. That's the end of it. Unfortunately, it went by really quick, and I hope one day, you could come back and tell us some more of your stories, Sebastian. That'd be cool.
Sure. Anytime. Well, thank you very much for having me, Joe. It was great.
No problem. Thanks for coming out. All right, guys, we got to end this thing. Next week, we're going to have David Griffin on, who is the Imperator of the Golden Dawn. We're going to be simulcasting, actually, so that's going to be pretty cool. Also, Wolfman's coming on next. Don't forget that. He's going to be, I think he's got Gordon coming on tonight. Joe Cerletti debuts Sundays also on TV. And don't ever forget about Beyond the Strange. We're kicking off this weekend right. We'll see you next week, guys. Thanks for coming out. Thanks, Sebastian.
Thank you.